Wine woke up late at morning. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, falling gently across the bed. She stared, blinking in surprise, when she realized how late it already was. Turning to her side, she saw her husband, still fast asleep, his face calm and untroubled by the chaos of time. Quietly, she slipped out of the bed and headed to the bathroom. After a quick wash, she came back to find him still buried in dreams. Jeon Jungkook, known to the world as a powerful businessman who ran multiple companies, was rarely seen resting this peacefully. Their marriage had been arranged by both families, and before the wedding, Wine had hardly spent any time with him. He had always been too busy, his schedules filled with meetings, projects, and obligations. Stepping closer, she gently called out, "Wyan, Jungkook, woke up. It's morning." Her voice was soft at first, but after calling him several times, his eyes finally fluttered open. He glanced at her through sleepy lids. "Jungkook, what time is it?" His voice was low and heavy with sleep. "Wyan, it's already 8:30, she replied. The word struck him like a jolt. He sat up abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "Jungkook, damn, I have an important meeting." Without another word, he jumped out of bed and rushed into the bathroom. One sighed, making her way toward the kitchen. She began preparing breakfast quickly, her hand moving faster than usual, knowing how little time he had. But before she was even finished, Jungkook came downstairs, already dressed for work, impatient written across his face. "Jungkook, just give me whatever's ready," he said curtly. Wayne hurried to place the half-prepared meal before him. He ate a few bites of the hot food without much attention, his eyes already on the clock. Within moments, he stood up, grabbed his things, and headed for the door. Wine followed him silently, stopping at the doorway as he left. She stood there, watching his bag disappear into the busy world he belongs to, a quiet ache blooming in her chest. Wine walked back into their bedroom, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. Tonight felt special. It was their first anniversary. She had imagined that maybe Jungkook would surprise her at midnight, whisper a soft happy anniversary when the world was asleep. But the night had passed differently. He had come home late, as always, exhausted from endless work, and by then she had already fallen asleep waiting. Still, she could not help but remember exactly 1 year ago, this very day, their lives had changed forever. A year ago, Wayne had been trembling with nerves, her heart pounding beneath the heavy bridal attire. She hadn't spoken much with Jungkook before the wedding. Their marriage had been arranged, and although she had seen him a few times, he had always been too busy, his phone buzzing with meetings and deadlines. Vian, being introverted, hadn't meant much, though a part of her longed to know the man she was about to marry. She sat quietly, dressed as a bride. When her father walked in, his eyes softened, filling with emotion. He tried to hide behind a smile. "Mr. Min, my little girl," he said gently, "you look so beautiful today. In just a little while, you will leave this house and start a new life in another." The words piqued her heart, her throat tightened, and before she could respond, her mother entered the room, teasing lightly. "Mrs. Mean, what secret talks are going on between father and daughter for so long?" Her father sighed, glancing at Wine's mother. "Mr. Mean, it's strange. It feels like only yesterday she was a child. I didn't even realize when she grew up." Her mother adjusted the edge of Wine's veil, her own eyes glistening. Wine's chest ached with the weight of their emotions. "Mr. Min, come," her father whispered at last, holding out his hand. "Jungkook is waiting for you." Her heart hammered harder as he led her toward the hall. The sound of chatter and music surrounded her, but she barely noticed. Ahead, Jungkook stood tall, waiting. Nervousness pulled in her stomach as their eyes met. Jungkook extended his hand, and Wan's father placed hers into it with a steady grip. Mr. Min, from now on, her father said firmly, my daughter's every responsibility is yours. Jungkook's reply was calm and confident. Jungkook, don't worry, she will never know pain while she is with me. Standing face to face with him, Wan felt her breath quickened. Then the priest began the ceremony. Priest, Jeon Jungkook, do you take Min Wayan as your wife in happiness and sorrow, in every trial and every moment of life? Jungkook, I do, he answered without hesitation. Priest, and Min Wayan, do you take Jeon Jungkook as your husband in happiness and sorrow, in every trial and every moment of life? Her lips trembled, but she managed to whisper, Why, I do. The priest smiled. Priest, exchange your rings. Their hand brushed as they slid the rings onto each other's fingers. Wine's pulse raised, and before she could steady herself, the priest announced, Priest, now the husband may kiss his wife. Her heart nearly stopped. She thought he would place a gentle kiss on her forehead, something modest and safe. But Jungkook leaned closer, his gaze steady, and in front of everyone pressed his lips to hers. Heat rushed to her cheeks, and her entire face burned crimson with embarrassment. The ceremony ended with blessing and smiled, and Jungkook's parents stepped forward. Mr. Jeon Jungkook, his father said, it's time to take wine to your new home, but Jungkook frowned slightly. Jungkook, I already told you I won't be home all the time. How will wine manage in such a big house alone? His mother chuckled warmly. Mrs. Jeon, you are newlyweds. It's better if you live separately and learn each other's ways. And forget about work for now. You will take a few days off. I expect to hear the word grandmothers very soon. Wise cheeks burned again at her mother-in-law's teasing. She lowered her gaze shy and overwhelmed. Hand in hand, they stepped out together, beginning the journey of a marriage that neither of them yet understood. When Jungkook and Wine entered their new home, Wine's eyes lit in surprise. The entire room was decorated with flowers, their fragrance warping the air with sweetness. She turned to look at him, her heart skipping a beat. Jungkook gave a small shrug. Jungkook, maybe it's my parents or yours. Probably because it's our wedding night. Go on, freshen up. Wine's heartbeat raced at the thought. She quietly slipped into the bathroom. In the mirror, her reflection stared back, her cheeks flushed red, her lips trembling with nervousness. She reached behind to open the zipper of her dress, but her fingers would not go far enough. She struggled again and again, only to fail. Finally, she opened the door slightly and peeked outside. Jungkook was there, just stepping back into the room after changing. Jungkook, do you need something? He asked, his tone calm. One hesitated, her face burning with embarrassment. Then she whispered, barely audible, Wine, my dress, the zipper is stuck, I can't open it. Jungkook didn't tease her, nor did he smile. He simply said, Jungkook, it's fine, I will help. He stepped into the bathroom. In the mirror, Wine could see both of them, herself with lowered eyes, and Jungkook standing close behind her. Slowly his fingers touched the fabric near her back, brushing lightly against her skin. The brief contact sent shivers racing across Wine's body. Every fine hair stood at edge. He carefully pulled the zipper down, the sound of it echoing in the quiet room. Wine's eyes fluttered shut, her lips parting slightly as if she could not handle the closeness. Jungkook caught the image in the mirror. Wine, with her eyes closed, her face flushed like a fragile rose. Jungkook, it's done, he said softly, stepping back. Grow, freshened up. Wayne opened her eyes and nodded quietly, not daring to meet his gaze. When she came out a while later, Jungkook was still waiting. "Jungkook, are you hungry?" he asked gently. "If you want something, just tell me." Wayne shook her head. "Wayne, no, I'm not hungry." "Jungkook," then he said, glancing at the bed covered with flowers, "let's sleep." He lay down first, leaving space beside him. Wayne hesitated, her heart drumming against her ribs. Slowly she climbed onto the bed, settling nervously on the far side. The decorated room, the glowing lights, the faint scent of roses, it all made her chest feel tight. Both of them lay awake, unable to sleep. The silence was broken only by the rhythm of their breathing, the steady pounding of two restless hearts. "Jungkook, are you happy with this marriage?" he asked suddenly, his voice low in the dark. The question startled Wayne. She turned her head slightly. "Wayne, why would not I be?" He exhaled. "Jungkook, it all happened so suddenly. We barely spoke before the wedding." "Wayne, I chose this marriage willingly," she whispered back. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Then Jungkook spoke, his voice firm but honest. "Jungkook, I will be busy most of the time. I may not be able to give you as much time as you deserve. Can you accept that?" Why didn't answer with the words. She simply nodded. Jungkook lowered his gaze, the weight of his words still hanging in the air. Then, without thinking, he reached out and touched her cheek. Wine froze, staring into his eyes. Slowly, she lifted her hand and placed it over his. The world seemed to shiver in the moment. Chunk leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips, and kissed her softly. At first, the kiss deepened, growing more intense, until both of them were lost in each other. The night stretched on endlessly, wrapping them in a new beginning neither of them had expected. From past to present, one sat on the edge of the bed, smiling faintly to herself, lost in memories of the past, those tender moments of their wedding night, the nervousness glances and the shy laughter. They still lived vividly in her heart. But suddenly she shook her head. Today wasn't a day to drift into the past. She had to work to do. It was their anniversary, and she wanted everything to be perfect. She hurried into the kitchen, pulling out the ingredients she had already brought days ago. She had planned carefully. Every dish would be Jungkook's favorite. The entire morning and half of the afternoon disappeared into chopping, cooking, and setting the table. By the time the meals were done, she was exhausted, yet her heart beat with anticipation. The last thing left was the cake. For weeks she had been secretly practicing, learning how to bake. Today would be her first real attempt at making it just right. Her hands trembled with nervousness as she prepared the batter, mixing carefully, pouring it into the pan, and sliding it into the oven. The minutes stretched endlessly until the aroma finally filled the kitchen. When she pulled the cake out, her heart leaped. It was perfect. She decorated it slowly, spreading creams across its surface, adding delicate designs. When it was done, she placed it at the center of the dining table. Around it she lit candles, their glow soft and romantic. The flowers she had ordered earlier arrived, and she arranged them carefully until the room looked like a dream. One stood back and whispered to herself, "Why and now? I need to get ready. I will wear the dress Jungkook gave me, the one I have been saving for today." Her cheeks warmed at the thought, and she quickly went upstairs. She dressed slowly, taking her time with her hair and makeup, wanting to look perfect for him. By the time she came downstairs again, the evening had deepened into night. She sat at the table, her heart fluttering as she imagined Jungkook's reaction. Any moment now he would walk through the door, tired but smiling. When he saw what she had done, minutes passed, then hours. The food grew cold, the candles flickered low. One sat still, her smile slowly fading. The clock ticked mercilessly, but Jungkook didn't come. Her chest tightened with a familiar ache. Still, she forced herself to move. She picked up the knife, blew out the candles one by one, and whispered softly, her voice breaking, "Happy anniversary." She cut a small piece of the cake and placed it in her mouth. The sweetness mixed with the salt of her tears. She laughed through her sobs, a fragile sound that echoed in the empty house. At last, too weary to keep waiting, Wine laid her head down on the decorated table, surrounded by the wilting flowers and melted wax. She drifted into sleep, still waiting for the man who never came home. Jungkook had been standing at the door for a long time, but Wine didn't open it. With a sign, he finally used the spare key and stepped inside. The living room was empty. "Jungkook, Wine," he called softly, but there was no response. He searched the bedroom, then the balcony, but she was nowhere to be found. Finally, he walked toward the kitchen. He saw her sitting at the dining table, her head resting on her arms, lost in sleep. "Jungkook, Wine," he whispered gently. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice. Startled, she quickly wiped the tears from her cheeks as she saw him standing there. She turned her face away and began to rise, but Jungkook stepped forward, stopping her. "Jungkook, happy anniversary, my love," he said softly. Before she could respond, he pulled something from his pocket. At the press of a switch, tiny artificial birds sprang from the corners of the room, fluttering across the walls in a magical display. Once I sweetened in surprise. "Jungkook, did you really think I would forget?" His voice grew tender. "How could I even forget the most important day of my life?" Her heart began to race. Slowly Jungkook reached into his bag and drew out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a sparkling diamond necklace. One gasped as he carefully placed it around her neck. "Jungkook, I'm sorry I was late," he said. "I asked my secretary to find this exact piece, but he failed. I wanted it to be perfect, so I had to search for it myself." As he spoke, Jungkook noticed tears rolling down Wine's cheek. He cupped her face gently. "Jungkook, hey, why are you crying? Do you know how beautiful you look right now?" he whispered before pulling her into his arms. She sobbed softly against his chest. "Wine, I thought you had forgotten," she admitted. "I waited for you all evening." Jungkook chuckled warmly. "Jungkook, forget? Never. I guess the waiting made this moment sweeter, didn't it?" He kissed the top of her head. "Come on, let's cut the cake." Hand in hand, they went to the table, only to find the cake already sliced. "Jungkook, you cut it without me?" he teased. Wine laughed. "Wine, I waited for so long. I thought you weren't coming, so I cut it alone." "Jungkook, that's not fair," Jungkook said with mock seriousness, lighting the candle. He placed it on the cake. Together they blew it out and cut another piece. He lifted a slice to Wine's lip and she took a bite, smiling. Wine returned the gesture and feeding him in turn. "Jungkook, this cake doesn't taste like the bakeries," he said thoughtfully. "Wine, that's because I baked it myself," she replied shyly. His eyes softened. "Jungkook, then it's the best cake I have ever had." They sat together at the table, laughing and sharing stories as he happily devoured every dish Wine had cooked with her own hands. Later that night, Jungkook and Wine lay side by side on the bed, the glow of the lamp casting a gentle warmth over them. Jungkook turned toward her. "Jungkook, have I told you something tonight?" Wine looked at him curiously. "Wine, hot, Jungkook, that you looked absolutely beautiful," he whispered. A blush crept across Wine's cheeks, and she lowered her gaze shyly. Jungkook smiled at her reaction. "Jungkook, what's wrong? Won't you say anything?" He lifted his hand and brushed his fingers against her cheek. Wine slowly turned her face toward him, their eyes meeting in the quiet stillness. Jungkook, let's make tonight unforgettable too, he murmured, his voice deep and tender. Before one could respond, he leaned in and captured her lips in a kiss. Her protest dissolved into silence as his warmth enveloped her. He pulled her closer, holding her as if he could never let go, their hearts beating in unison. The world outside seemed to fade away. Time stilled, leaving only the two of them lost in each other, in love, in a moment they would remember for the rest of their lives.